have a question for you. Have you ever sent a laughing text message or a laughing emoji while keeping a completely straight face? Parang ganito.
Haha, LMAO, you're so funny, I can't stop laughing, Grey Blue.
If so, then you're not alone. I always do the exact same thing, like the other day. Except it was a little different. This is how it went.
I was scrolling through Facebook when my friend suddenly messaged me. It was about her boyfriend who cheated on her again.
And I could sense that she didn't want my advice. She just wanted someone who would empathize with her, someone she could share her hurt with. So that's what I did.
I am so sorry. I know it sucks. Seeing you sad and hurting makes me want to cry.
Except it didn't. Seeing her sad didn't make me want to cry. In fact, it didn't even affect me at all. I was even thinking, it's her fault because she keeps forgiving him. And that bothered me. It bothered me so much because first, I was blaming my friend for something that was done to her, which is victim blaming. And second, I was bothered because I take so much pride in being an empath, in being able to relate to other people's struggles. And this showed that I had no empathy. So I did what I always do. I researched. I went to Google and I remember the first thing that I searched for was declining empathy. So I browsed and I browsed until I came across the term compassion fatigue, which is what we're gonna talk about today. Compassion fatigue is a recent concept that was first coined by Charles Figley in the 1980s.
It is defined as negative cognitive and emotional consequences that can affect helping professionals or caregivers over time. It refers to an identifiable set of psychological symptoms that caregivers experience as a result of providing care while being exposed to either primary or secondary trauma.
So basically, compassion fatigue is when professional healthcare workers are so emotionally drained from giving so much empathy and giving so much compassion to their patients that their compassion generally drops down. After reading this, I immediately looked for the psychological symptoms to see if it aligned with what I was experiencing, and it very well did. Number one is apathy. This is when you lack enthusiasm or lack motivation to do anything. Second is anger or irritability. This is when you get easily upset or easily frustrated over the small things or the small inconveniences. Third is self isolation. This is when you isolate yourself or you separate yourself from other people, even your friends and your loved ones. Fourth is negativity. This is the tendency to always expect the worst. Last and fifth is the physical fatigue. This is when you're so physically tired that you find it so hard to do the things that you normally do, like um, taking a bath, brushing your teeth, or even eating. So, why was I experiencing these symptoms when clearly I'm not a nurse or a caregiver? According to Figley, we are all potentially vulnerable to compassion fatigue. You don't have to be in the professional business of caring. You just have to be caring. So, what was most commonly seen among healthcare professionals whose work puts them in situations wherein they witness sufferings on a daily basis is now experienced by regular people like me or you. And let's be honest, if you're a person and you have internet, you'll notice that we are being broadcasted tragedy instantly and consistently all day long. But before I discuss how we can manage or deal with this, we first must understand what happens when we do experience it. So, I guess we're all familiar with the autonomic nervous system, and for those who are not, the autonomic nervous system is part of our nervous system that deals with the automated processes within our bodies. Some examples are heart rate and breathing. These are things that we do not have to actively think about in order for them to happen. Now, the autonomic nervous system is divided into two parts, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system handles activation and operates our fight or flight response. The part of you that tenses up when you're in a stressful situation is your sympathetic nervous system being activated. Now, don't get me wrong, activation is not a bad thing. There is a certain amount of arousal that can help us out. But we aren't designed to be in the sympathetic system mode all the time. In fact, we are designed to be in the parasympathetic system majority of the time. The parasympathetic system is settled and calm. It's the resting phase. It is the way we act and feel when there is no imminent threat.
In a normal day, your system looks like this, easily flowing between being more activated or more restful, but it will stay within an optimal range.
When we experience trauma, whether it is our own or the trauma of a client or patient, or in our case, someone we care for, it raises our sympathetic nervous system. Now I want you to do something. I want you to close your eyes and imagine something that you're scared of. For example, if you're scared of spiders, I want you to imagine that one is crawling up on you. Now, if you did this right, you probably experienced tensed muscles and increased heart rate. That is the system perceiving that there is a potential threat. And the brain doesn't have the ability to differentiate between a threat to ourselves and a threat to someone we care for. So whether or not the stress is primary, our activation level goes up. And this is normal. This is what our bodies are supposed to do. However, when we don't bring our system back down once the threat is gone, that is when we run into problems. For example, imagine that you're walking your dog and then suddenly your dog barks at another dog and then gets into this messy dog fight. Now it's up to you to break up that fight. So naturally, your system is very activated while this is happening. Blood is going to rush from your brain to your muscles to help you handle the dangerous situation. So from this, your sympathetic nervous system is activated to this. Now let's say that the dog fight happened at the beginning of your day and it's only 8 a.m. You don't really have time for self-care. So what you do is you take a deep breath. You take a deep breath to help bring your activation levels down, but it didn't really get you down to your baseline. So you're now working at a higher level than you were when you started in the morning. Next, the phone rings and it's your boss who's furious because you didn't do the thing that she asked you to do. So a new threat occurs. Now you're stressed and you're tensed and your activation levels go up again. Over time, this can be a pattern. And before we know it, we're almost never getting back down into the optimal levels. And when we spend too much time with the sympathetic nervous system in command, the psychological symptoms that I was talking about earlier start showing up.
Now look at this. The pink line is how we want our systems to look, and the blue line is the way it looks after working in a caregiving position for long periods of time.
And as research has shown, compassion fatigue does not require that you undergo stress or trauma. It could be simply from empathizing with someone who has gone through it. So let me ask you, how many bad news have you received this month or this week? How many times have you opened Facebook and see that your friend has lost a loved one? Once I learned about compassion fatigue, I started to see it everywhere. And I believe that if there is a time to talk about this paradox of the human psychology, about how empathizing with someone can morph into resenting them, it is now. Not only because thousands of healthcare workers and thousands of frontliners are currently living their most difficult hours, but also because, to a lesser degree, the rest of us are susceptible as well. The pandemic is a stressor that hits everyone. Now everybody knows what it's like to have compassion fatigue. It is no longer a thing that public servants get from work. It is a thing that everybody feels just from living and staying alive. So the question is, how do we prevent or deal with it? The key is to take time to focus on yourself. It might seem counterintuitive, but consider this. Mother Teresa famously required the sisters under her authority to take a year off every 4 to 5 years to recover from the stress of caring. Unfortunately, most of us can't take a year away from our responsibilities. But here's what we can do.
We can practice self care, set emotional boundaries, build and use a support network, reduce your stress, use active and healthy coping mechanisms, and lastly, pick your causes.
Sometimes it might seem that the world and its problems are so overwhelming. The number of COVID cases are increasing, there are riots, people are dying from police brutality, and you want to help. You want to be able to support the causes that will make the world a better place. But sometimes that means maintaining a balance between the compassion you have for other people and your causes and the compassion that you have for yourself and your own mental well being. Because how can you help others when you need help first?